Hello, today on my channel you will hear an amazing story about life. I hope you enjoy this story. This one struck me to the core. Honestly, I still can't forget it. Enjoy watching.
I should have gone to VGIK to the acting department. I would have been the best student there. It is necessary to have a certain talent. Kevin praised himself and smiled. But today, Kevin was waiting for a complete fiasco at home. Maria was sitting on the sofa with a lost look and tears were rolling from her eyes. "Maria, honey, what's wrong?" Concerned about her condition, Kevin jumped to her. He knelt down in front of her and began to gently wipe away her tears. "Tell me, sweetheart, who hurt you?" "I had Tracy's laminating appointment today. Her phone was on the table. She got a message from you. You consulted her on the best date to take tickets to Egypt." Maria carefully watched her husband's reaction. "Honey, you've definitely got me confused with someone else." Kevin started making excuses and glancing warily at his wife. "No, I didn't." Maria didn't let him finish, but interrupted him. "I grabbed your mistress by the hair and threatened her. If she doesn't tell me the truth, I'll cut out a piece of her hair in the most visible place." She confessed everything, Kevin. Maria raised her eyes full of tears to her husband. "Let me go," Tracy screamed. "I don't have anything to do with this. Deal with your husband. He doesn't let a single skirt pass him by. I went to the gym and I saw him licking his lips at me. I didn't know he was married." Maria let go of her hair, which she wound around her arm in anger. "You're crazy. You need treatment." Almost crying, Tracy said, "You would be better to your husband, so grab by the hair. Maybe he would be less walking from you." Maria went home. First of all, she opened the safe and took out all the cash they had saved for the development of their business. She took John to his mother beforehand so that he would not ask any questions. Maria took her time gathering all the necessary things into a suitcase and rolled it out into the hallway. When she heard the door lock rattle, she sat down on the sofa, put her leg over her leg, and waited impatiently for her husband. Maria saw Kevin's eyes widen when she told him about the conversation with his mistress and when she told him that she almost lost her hair. Kevin choked on his own saliva and coughed as if it was happening to him. He touched his hair to make sure and calmed down when he realized that it was in place. Maria put the strap from her purse on her shoulder, took the handle of the suitcase, and slowly rolled it to the door. "I'm leaving you, Kevin. I should have done it a long time ago, but I was naive and trusted you to be decent. But thanks to Tracy, she's opened my eyes to a lot of things. When you see her again, tell her I said hello and thank her for taking the rose-colored glasses off my eyes." Kevin stared at her with a blank stare, wanting to justify himself to his wife, because he had always been good at messing with her mind, but now he couldn't think of a single good idea to get out of this unpleasant story. "I wonder what else Tracy could have said. She couldn't have told me that we tried every position in the Kama Sutra, could she?" Kevin grimaced. For the first time in his life, he was suddenly disgusted and almost vomited at the memory. "Maria, honey, you've got it all wrong." Kevin started talking and stammering in fear. He imagined that now his good and decent Maria would leave him, and who would he be left with? No, sorry. He was not ready to lose his wife. Kevin knelt down in front of his wife, wrapped his arms around her waist, and looked into her eyes as pitifully as possible. "Maria, I'm sorry. It's the first time I've had such a thing. I don't need anyone but you and John. Don't leave me. Do you want me to call this Tracy and tell her that it's over between us? I'll tell her that I need her as a dog's fifth leg." Maria disdainfully removed his hands. "Don't bother, Kevin. You don't have to make that kind of sacrifice. You'll lose your tickets to Egypt and your 5-star hotel. Kevin, you've always been good with money. I can't call you a spender. Remember how you sent me to the cottage to my mother and son every summer because we could not afford foreign trips?" Kevin's heart snapped and squeezed into a ball of shame in front of his wife. Only yesterday, they talked to her on this topic, and he assured her that next year, they will definitely find the money for a vacation. "Maria, we can't do it this year. We'll have to be patient." Kevin squeezed his eyes shut and lowered his head, remembering his words. Maria looked at him disappointedly, holding back her tears. "I don't know what came over me. I treat girls like Tracy as sports equipment to be used as intended, and nothing more. Don't go, Maria. Please don't go." Kevin stopped at the end of the gym. On the treadmill, a sultry brunette with a solid size 3 breasts and a tattoo on her shoulder was hard at work. Kevin slowly ran his palm over his 3-day stubble and signaled her to stop. "That's enough, let's move on to another projectile." Kevin did not let on that the girl was interested in him, and together with her went to the apparatus. For a man spoiled by women's attention, with a height of 5 feet, narrow waist, broad shoulders, and cubes on his chest, it did not escape him that the girl was also interested in him and sent him unmistakable languorous looks. While Tracy, swaying her hips, went to the apparatus, Kevin was looking at her form with an appraising eye. He paid special attention to her long legs, her appetizing fifth point, and the hollow between her breasts. Her behavior spoke for itself. "Take me, I'm all yours." Kevin considered himself a well-mannered young man and was not accustomed to refusing a lady if she insisted on continuing. At about 10 o'clock in the evening, after a tiring workout, with all its consequences, Kevin sent Tracy home in a cab, and he was barely able to get to his car to go home. Wow, it's 11:30. He had to hurry so his wife wouldn't guess anything and start asking questions he couldn't answer. As he stepped out of the elevator, Kevin smelled the food coming from his apartment. "Maria, I'm here. Why isn't anyone here to greet me?" His wife ran out into the hallway, hugged him, kissed him gently on the cheek, and pressed herself against his chest. "What took so long? I was getting worried." Maria looked at him with her trusting eyes and pouted her chubby lips resentfully. "Honey, you don't know how tired I am of these fattened women who want to be as slim as a dove in one session. But for the sake of you and John, I have to put up with it and take extra workouts." He grinned and shrugged. "You're the breadwinner." Maria kissed him softly on the lips. "Go wash your hands, I'll feed you." "And what does it smell so good?" "The smell of it makes me sick to my stomach and drool." Kevin asked and went to wash his hands. Kevin put the foam on the kitchen table and started dinner. "Oh, not this." Kevin guessed it was Tracy sending him a message. He grabbed the phone and turned it off defiantly. They'd gotten so cocky they didn't even look at the time. "I warned them not to call after 10 o'clock because I have a small child." Kevin was so sincerely indignant that he believed he was telling the truth. After a delicious dinner, Kevin drank a glass of freshly squeezed juice and leaned back in his chair, contentedly remembering everything that he and Tracy had done tonight. Kevin sighed heavily. He would give anything to be in the lounge with her again, but in the bedroom his wife was waiting for him, who had long since stopped playing games with him. Kevin's mood immediately soured, and while his wife went to the nursery to check on her son, he grabbed his phone and started texting Tracy. In the morning, Kevin woke up to the delicious smell of scrambled eggs and bacon. He stretched out in bed, got up, did 30 push-ups from the floor, and walked out of the bedroom to find himself face to face with Maria, who was on her way to call him for breakfast. Maria's phone rang. "Yes, just a minute. Let me see what time I can get you in." "It's 1:20. "Great. Then I'll book you in." "Tracy, just Tracy. I'll see you all tomorrow for your hair coloring." When Kevin heard his lover's name, he froze with bacon in his mouth and almost spilled hot coffee on his hand. He called Tracy in the car. "Hi," she murmured languidly. "Miss me already?" Tracy continued to purr softly. "Tracy, why did you make an appointment with my wife to get your hair done?" "I'm asking you not to do that." He mumbled unhappily into the phone. There was silence for a while. "Kevin, I didn't know it was your wife. A friend gave me the phone number of this guy. I called him on a tip. It's nothing personal. You're gonna have to sign up with another guy." Kevin started to insist. Tracy thought about it for a while and spoke softly. "I'd be very interested in meeting the wife of such a hot macho man." After a few seconds of thinking, Kevin angrily hung up the phone, hit the gas, and drove to work. Tracy had Kevin in her clutches. Every evening she came to the gym, and after a personal training session, squeezed all the juices out of him. Kevin came home late, moving slowly because of the traffic and a lot of traffic. He was in a great mood. Today, he and Tracy had decided to go on vacation for a week to get away from the hustle and bustle of the world and enjoy each other. He had already thought of what he would tell his wife. He would go to school for a week for her. It was unlikely that Maria would suspect him of lying, because Kevin had never given his wife any reason to doubt his infidelity. For her, he was always a good and faithful family man. Kevin grinned wryly. "I'll make it up to you, I promise you. At least for the sake of my son, let's try to keep the family." Maria grinned bitterly, and in order not to burst into tears and not to show her weakness, she walked around him and went out the door. "I won't let you go. I'll fix everything. If you want, I'll even quit this job and find another one." Kevin shouted at the whole building, grabbed her elbow, and to hold her, began to pull her back into the apartment. Maria disdainfully pulled her elbow and shoved him away from her. "No." She shook her head and grabbed the handle of her suitcase. "Forget about the happy family we had. In our family, behind the happy mask hid lies, deceit, and betrayal on your part. I do not want to live like that. I cannot live with a man who does not love and respect me." Maria thought a little and continued, "And you know, I will definitely find a man who will love me and will not laugh behind my back." Maria brushed a tear off her cheek and looking intently at Kevin point blank, she continued, "And I wish you good luck. Now you don't have to hide and wiggle around like a frying pan. You'll live the life you want, even though you've never denied yourself anything. Goodbye. I'll let you know the date of the divorce." She said and got in the elevator. What an asshole. What an asshole. A lecherous bastard who indiscriminately sticks his junk in anything that moves. Cousin Sophia was cursing when she saw Maria with a suitcase on the doorstep. "And this is a married man with a growing son. You didn't accidentally hit him with a frying pan before you left, did you?" "No." Maria smiled bitterly. "You should have," shouted Sophia. Maria covered her face with her hands and sobbed bitterly. "Calm down," Sophia said in a calmer tone, sighed and stroked her sister's head. "He is not worth your tears. Tomorrow go and file the divorce papers." Maria wiped her eyes red from tears, blew her nose and nodded her head. "Sophia, I'll stay at your place for now. I don't want to stay with my mom. Her brother and his wife live there now. I want to rent an apartment. As soon as I rent an apartment, I'll move out of your place. Well, not to kick you out on the street," her sister said sympathetically and shook her head. "Now let your Kevin bite his elbows, where else he will find such a dushka to iron his socks and panties from both sides and put a sock in his pocket. And maybe he will even be happy to divorce." Maria said thoughtfully, looked at Sophia, and smiled bitterly. "Now I won't have to lie about why he was late at work and worry that I'll get into his phone, with which he never leaves. He will hire a housekeeper who will wash, iron, cook, and clean," sadly said Maria. "So the housekeeper has to pay for everything, and you did everything for free." With a chuckle in her voice commented on Maria's words Sophia. "There will be less money left for different whoremongers," she continued. "Don't take offense, Maria, but it's all your own fault. You're working too much at work, and then you run to the kitchen to cook chops for Kevin. And Kevin gets tired. He takes overtime. Now you finally realize what kind of overtime he had. While you were carrying bags of groceries from the supermarket to feed Kevin better, he was practicing new poses with different fucks on the equipment." Sophia sighed heavily. "Come on, I'll make you some tea. I have borscht in the fridge, but I don't even offer it. I can see that you can't eat a bite now." Maria sobbed and brushed a tear from her cheek again. "You're right, Sophia." She spoiled him, looked into his mouth, and blew dust off him, so he felt like Apollo. Maria said barely audibly and looked at her sister in surprise, because at that moment the front door bell rang. "Are you waiting for someone?" Maria said in a frightened voice and rounded her eyes in fear. "Who are you scared of? Do you think Kevin has already come for you? Don't be fooled, sister." Sophia put the mug with tea on the table and went to open the door. Maria held her breath and hid behind the curtain just in case. "Maria, where are you? Come out of your hiding place. What the hell kind of wife am I to you if you're going on vacation tomorrow with your mistress?" Maria screamed. "Maria, we need to talk to you urgently," Kevin said loudly, stammering in surprise. "What can we talk to you about?" She crossed her arms over her chest and leaned back against the wall, her whole body trembling with excitement, but she tried to look calm and not to show it. "Maria, what right did you have to take all the money out of the safe? Give back at least half of it." Without preamble, Kevin looked at his wife pleadingly. Not enough money for the trip. Didn't get paid enough for overtime? You can make it up as you wish. You've already spent your half of the money. I took my half. Now get out. Maria pointed at the door. Maria, let's talk to you alone, without strangers. He turned his head and looked defiantly at Sophia, who looked at him with undisguised contempt from head to toe. You and I are adults, so why did we need third parties? Kevin kept his angry gaze on Sophia, showing her that she was unnecessary. Let's discuss our future life and find the best way out of this situation. He continued talking, ignoring the laughter. Our future life. Maria repeated his words in surprise. Do you know what you're saying? We are no more, Kevin, and there will never be any more. There is you, your work, your girls with whom you hold master classes, and I am not in your life, and never was. Maria smiled sadly and sighed heavily. Maria, if you now tell me to refuse a trip to Egypt, I'll throw away the ticket and stay home with you. Your peace of mind and the health of my son are more important to me than anything else. Kevin went on with his prepared speech, justifying himself and his actions. Do you really think that I would trade you and my son for some other woman who would jump into my bed at the first call? Kevin wrinkled his face and clenched his hands into fists. It's even funny. Looking at his wife with a guilty look, he continued his speech. Why do you need money if you're not going to Egypt? Sophia asked with a sneer. You're the only one who is missing here with your stupid questions. Kevin thought to himself and turned his gaze to her. Sophia, can I talk to my wife? Sophia raised her eyebrows in surprise, shook her head and continued. Marie should have left you a long time ago. Maybe long ago forgot you and would not remember as a terrible dream. Or did you decide to take your wife to rest with you instead of a mistress? Kevin did not expect such a question and began to frantically search for all kinds of solutions in his head. Going on vacation with his wife wouldn't be desirable, of course. You can't relax with Maria like you can with Tracy, and Tracy won't give up her vacation. She sleeps and sees herself in Egypt. I'd love to go with you, Maria. He began to speak uncertainly, carefully choosing words, thinking how to get out of this situation. But airplane tickets are non-refundable. You can't change them. He smiled guiltily and pressed his lips together in a tight line. Sophia laughed and clapped her hand on her leg, which was to be expected. I was checking you out, Kevin, and you didn't pass, of course. Maria, should I stay or should I go? She asked her sister a question, ignoring Kevin. Sophia, don't go. I have nothing else to talk to him about. What do you mean there's nothing else to talk about? Have you lost your mind, Maria? We have a family, a child. If you've remembered, what? You're gonna ruin it all over one ridiculous affair. Have you thought about your son? Maria watched her husband's frustration and wondered how she hadn't noticed his insolence and endless lies before. Maria laughed and clapped her hands together. Kevin, I always told you that you chose the wrong profession. You would have made a great artist if you had entered the theater. Go away, Kevin. I filed for divorce. You're about to get a subpoena. Kevin's face changed immediately, red as a tomato, his eyes rounded, a vein of anger rising above his eyebrow. You filed for divorce? Are you all right in the head? Did your little sister put you up to this? She's living without a man and she's setting you up, and you're all ears. She filed for divorce. Kevin mocked her. You couldn't think of anything cleverer. He stared at Maria and watched her every gesture, trying to understand her mood for the future. He noted to himself that she had turned from soft and docile to rebellious, thanks to that crazy sister who was turning Maria against me. Maria, let's go home. I miss you. It's a neighbor brought a debt. She grabbed some money from me before the paycheck. And you hid behind the curtain? You think you cannot see? Sophia laughed heartily. I didn't even have time to think about anything. I just jumped up and hid behind the curtain out of fear. Smiling, began to justify Maria, embarrassed by her action. Who are you afraid of? What can he do to you? Do you think he will come and beg to come back? Sophia laughed again and looked at Maria judgmentally. Yes, I think he already invited Tracy and practiced new exercises on your bed, while you snot on your fist and wait for him to apologize. Sophia wrinkled her face and continued to teach her sister. I didn't like him right away. As soon as I saw him for the first time, all so correct, obliging. I didn't say anything to you then. I didn't want to upset you. But I warned him that if he let his hands loose again, I'd tell you everything. I remember how his face stretched at my threats. He looked at me like I was begging, and before anyone saw him, he twisted his finger at my temple. Sophia shook her head and curled her lips disdainfully. What a nasty and unpleasant man he was. Sophia shrugged and crinkled her shoulders like a toothache. It hadn't even been 5 years, and he'd already shown his true colors. Sophia sighed and looked at her sister, who sat demurely in her chair, rubbing her fingers together. After drinking a bottle of whiskey, Kevin stared at his phone, which was on the table, ringing persistently. He was in no condition to talk to Tracy at the moment. Kevin had texted her right after Maria had left, telling her that she was the reason his wife had left him and thanking her for sticking her nose where it didn't belong and talking with her tongue wherever and whenever she could. Kevin put the phone on silent mode and, barely moving his feet, went to the son's room, stood in the doorway for a while, thinking that his son might not be in this room ever again, and Mary would not meet him on the doorstep, would not throw herself on his neck with joy. Kevin had tears in his eyes, and his heart was beating such a drumbeat. He felt so sorry for himself that he collapsed on the children's bed. He buried his face in the pillow and gritted his teeth with heartache. Kevin woke up to the persistent ringing of the doorbell. Tracy stood on the doorstep smiling with all her 32 teeth. "You're the last thing I need right now," Kevin thought to himself and stepped away from the door, letting her into the apartment. "I had to get the address from your boss. I didn't like your mood last night. If you do anything else to yourself, we're going on vacation in 2 days." Tracy went into the hall and jumped on the couch. When she saw that Kevin didn't react to her at all, she stood up, put her arm around his shoulders, pushed him down, and they fell on the couch together. Tracy began to unzip her dress, looking flirtatiously at Kevin and licking her lips with her tongue. "Tracy, I'm not in the mood today." Kevin screwed up his face and started to get up off the couch. "Where did your mood go? Are you really that upset about your mentally ill wife? You should be glad she left you. You probably wouldn't have made such a desperate move yourself." Tracy slowly looked around the room. "It's cozy in here," she said, taking off her dress and wearing only lace underwear. She waved her index finger at Kevin, smiling coquettishly with her charming smile. His eyes lit up at once. He picked Tracy up in his arms and carried her to the marital bedroom. Maria was calling another realtor when Sophia came into her room. "Why are you running ahead of the train? You're in a hurry. I'm not chasing you." Sophia began to reprimand her. "You'll divorce your Kevin, divide your movable and immovable property, buy yourself an apartment, and then you'll leave me. And now live at my place with John and I will not be bored." Maria looked at her sister with approval. "Thank you, sis." Maria sighed and looked sadly at Sophia. She looked as if she was being led to the days for the death penalty. The sound of the front door bell interrupted their conversation. Sophia went to open the door. "Get my wife, I need her right away." Without any preamble, Kevin said angrily and started pushing Sophia out of the way to get into the apartment. "Hello to you two. I didn't invite you to visit." Sophia started to push him away and tried to close the door, but Kevin put his foot out so she couldn't slam it shut. "Where's my wife again?" He said it loud and clear. "I'm calling the police." Sophia shouted as she continued to try to close the door. "Let me go." He pushed Sophia away, went into the apartment and slammed the door behind him. Maria heard Kevin's voice and rushed to Sophia's aid. "What are you doing?" Now he's going to start feeling sorry for her. You can't tell a kid that his dad is full of shit and that it's better to stay away from him and have nothing to do with him. Sophia thought to herself and grabbed the keys to the apartment and ran downstairs. As soon as Kevin saw his son, he jumped out of the car and ran to him. "Daddy!" John exclaimed joyfully and jerked in his direction, but Sophia held his nephew's hand tightly and did not let go. Kevin jumped to the son, grabbed him in his arms, and held him tightly to his chest. "Hi, son. I missed you, John. Did you miss your daddy?" Kevin looked down at his son's face. John shook his head and hugged his father tightly around the neck. "John, let's go home. Mom is waiting for us. She missed you so much." John turned his head to Sophia and only opened his mouth to answer, but saw Maria, who ran out of the building and stretched out her arms to her son. John immediately starts kicking to be released by his father, and all his attention turns to Maria. He jumps into his mother's arms and hugs her tightly around the neck. Maria kisses her son first on one cheek, then on the other, begins to twirl him around and only then puts him on the ground. "Let's go home," she says with a satisfied smile and takes John's hand. John doesn't think long and takes his father's hand with his other hand. "Daddy's not coming with us, John. Daddy will come to you later," Maria says affectionately, but she looks at Kevin and shows him to leave with her eyes. But Kevin pretends not to notice his wife's hints and confidently pulls his son to the driveway. "Kevin, where are you going? We've already talked to you and made up our minds. Let's not get into it in front of the baby." She looks at him with a disapproving tone, sparks shooting from her eyes. "Maria, I miss my son too. Why do you have to decide everything for us? You see how happy John is to see me, and you want to deprive him of that joy." Kevin looked at Maria with the eyes of a battered dog looking for protection from its master, then slowly turned his gaze to Sophia. "Sophia, please tell your sister not to throw words around, but to think with her own head. It's easy to ruin everything. Look at your sister." He turned to Maria. "She's a year older than you, and she's alone. You think it's easy to live alone? No husband, no kids?" Kevin knelt down on his knees in front of Maria. The presence of a big puddle outside the building and two old ladies staring at them did not embarrass him. "Mary dear, forgive me for being a fool. You've always supported me and pulled me out of the shit I've gotten myself into from time to time." Kevin started wailing. "Maria, take your artist to the apartment," Sophia said grudgingly and opened the door with the intercom key. "The neighbors are already staring at us, so let's not give them something to talk about." "What an insolent and shameless man you are," Maria lamented after listening to her husband's heartwarming story. She widened her eyes and stammered and asked again, "So you want me to give you the money, which diligently saved to rent a separate room and open a salon?" "Maria, but I also gave you my entire paycheck," Kevin sighed and sighed resentfully. "No, there are no flaws in my Mary." Kevin thought with his hands on the steering wheel and looked around, hoping to see his wife and son. Kevin rehearsed again and again the words he would say to Marie when he met her. The phone rang. Kevin looked at the screen, made a sour face, but picked it up. "Did you miss me?" Tracy greeted him cheerfully. "Are you thinking of flying to the pyramids with me tomorrow?" Tracy made a small pause, but without waiting for an answer, continued. "Actually, what I'm calling. I decided to write a report on you about rape, or more precisely, violent actions of sexual character." Kevin furrowed his eyebrows as he listened to her babble and shook his head in confusion, as if he'd heard something incomprehensible and supernatural. "Are you all right in the head? There's no place to brand you, and you're accusing me of something." Kevin's forehead was sweating, and he clutched his head and swore out loud. "What more do you want from me?" He continued angrily shouting. "Money," Tracy answered calmly. "I thought you'd come with me and take me on your full support. But since I'm going alone, I need a lot of money to have a good vacation and not deny myself anything." Kevin knew that she was bluffing, but with a good deal of money, he could go to jail. "That's all I need." Kevin grimaced and slammed his hands on the steering wheel. Thank God she's of legal age. He cursed to himself as he thought of all the ways out of this ridiculous situation. The fact that she was with me was seen by everyone at the gym. She can find witnesses easily, and maybe I'll win the case, but she'll get on my nerves. "How much money do you want?" Stuttering at her insolence, Kevin asked in a disgruntled tone. $5,000. I don't ask for much. It's moral damages for babysitting you all this time. Believe me, it's a small amount compared to what I had to listen to from you. Tracy started laughing, and her laughter made Kevin's eyes darken. He swallowed nervously and gritted his teeth in anger. "Kevin, the money is needed today," Tracy said calmly. "You realize that I'm leaving tomorrow, and a spoonful is a spoonful." Kevin began to run through the names of people he knew who could get the money, and he settled on his wife. "I'll explain everything to her honestly. She should understand and forgive me." Kevin immediately pulled himself together and calmed down, praising himself for quickly finding a way out of the problem. "You'll get your money," Kevin replied in a disgruntled tone and pressed the disconnect button. Kevin saw Maria. He jumped out of the car, took the bouquet in his hands and headed towards her. Maria, hi. He handed her the flowers and smiled guiltily. Maria, I'm here on business. We need to talk urgently. Kevin started talking without any preamble. Maria rounded her eyes and made a frightened face and answered, What's wrong with you again, Kevin? Maria, don't get me wrong. I need money, $5,000, pronto. And why did you come to me in the first place? Maria had a question mark on her face and a look of total indifference. Who else would I turn to if not my own wife? Kevin lowered his eyes in shame and made an unhappy face. Kevin, don't even think about it. You won't get the money. You've been stealing from me and my son all this time, and now you're going to steal the rest of the money I've taken. I'm sorry, but you're on your own, and I still have a son to raise. I don't have extra money for your toys. Categorically answered Maria, turned around, and without saying goodbye went into the building. Kevin remained standing on the street and looked at the door, behind which his wife had disappeared a few minutes ago. Maria stood at the window and watched Kevin. Why doesn't he leave? Is he still hoping for something? Does he think I'm a complete fool who is madly in love with him and would do anything for him? Safia appeared on the horizon, leading John by the hand. They had agreed this morning that Safia would finally take him away from his mother. Maria missed her son and was looking forward to seeing John. She watched slowly as they approached Kevin, who opened the side window and smoked in the car, carelessly shaking the ashes out into the street. No, there are no flaws in my Mary. Kevin thought with his hands on the steering wheel and looked around, hoping to see his wife and son. Kevin rehearsed again and again the words he would say to Marie when he met her. The phone rang. Kevin looked at the screen, made a sour face, but picked it up. Did you miss me? Tracy greeted him cheerfully. Are you thinking of flying to the pyramids with me tomorrow? Tracy made a small pause, but without waiting for an answer, continued. Actually, what I'm calling. I decided to write a report on you about rape, or more precisely violent actions of sexual character. Kevin furrowed his eyebrows as he listened to her babble and shook his head in confusion, as if he'd heard something incomprehensible and supernatural. Are you all right in the head? There's no place to brand you and you're accusing me of something. Kevin's forehead was sweating, and he clutched his head and swore out loud. What more do you want from me? He continued angrily shouting. Money, Tracy answered calmly. I thought you'd come with me and take me on your full support, but since I'm going alone, I need a lot of money to have a good vacation and not deny myself anything. He even knew that she was bluffing, but with a good deal of money, he could go to jail. That's all I need. Kevin grimaced and slammed his hands on the steering wheel. Thank God she's of legal age. He cursed to himself as he thought of all the ways out of this ridiculous situation. The fact that she was with me was seen by everyone at the gym. She can find witnesses easily, and maybe I'll win the case, but she'll get on my nerves. How much money do you want? Stuttering at her insolence, Kevin asked in a disgruntled tone. $5,000. I don't ask for much. It's moral damages for babysitting you all this time. Believe me, it's a small amount compared to what I had to listen to from you. Tracy started laughing, and her laughter made Kevin's eyes darken. He swallowed nervously and gritted his teeth in anger. Kevin, the money is needed today. Tracy said calmly. You realize that I'm leaving tomorrow, and a spoonful is a spoonful. Kevin began to run through the names of people he knew who could get the money, and he settled on his wife. I'll explain everything to her honestly. She should understand and forgive me. Kevin immediately pulled himself together and calmed down, praising himself for quickly finding a way out of the problem. You'll get your money. Kevin replied in a disgruntled tone and pressed the disconnect button. Kevin saw Maria. He jumped out of the car, took the bouquet in his hands and headed towards her. Maria, hi. He handed her the flowers and smiled guiltily. Maria, I'm here on business. We need to talk urgently. Kevin started talking without any preamble. Maria rounded her eyes and made a frightened face and answered, What's wrong with you again, Kevin? Maria, don't get me wrong. I need money, $5,000, pronto. And why did you come to me in the first place? Maria had a question mark on her face and a look of total indifference. Who else would I turn to if not my own wife? Kevin lowered his eyes in shame and made an unhappy face. Kevin, don't even think about it. You won't get the money. You've been stealing from me and my son all this time, and now you're going to steal the rest of the money I've taken. I'm sorry, but you're on your own, and I still have a son to raise. I don't have extra money for your toys. Categorically answered Maria, turned around, and without saying goodbye went into the building. Kevin remained standing on the street and looked at the door, behind which his wife had disappeared a few minutes ago. Maria stood at the window and watched Kevin. Why doesn't he leave? Is he still hoping for something? Does he think I'm a complete fool who is madly in love with him and would do anything for him? Safia appeared on the horizon, leading John by the hand. They had agreed this morning that Safia would finally take him away from his mother. Maria missed her son and was looking forward to seeing John. She watched slowly as they approached Kevin, who opened the side window and smoked in the car, carelessly shaking the ashes out into the street. Kevin asked, sighing heavily and rising from his chair, and looked at Maria point blank. No, she answered and shrugged her shoulders for credibility. Is that your last word? Squinting his eyes and pressing his lips together, Kevin asked again. Yes. Maria answered briefly. He grinned, threw a crumpled napkin on the table, and without saying goodbye, walked toward the front door. He turned his head sharply, looked angrily at Sophia, turned his gaze to Maria, and smiled sorely. You'll regret it. Get ready for war. In a few days, there was almost nothing left of the lustrous and cheerful Kevin. The excitement was gone from his eyes. A deep sadness was reflected on his face, and he was completely apathetic to the world around him. All my troubles started as soon as I met that little girl. Kevin closed his eyes and crinkled his teeth as if from a toothache, remembering how Tracy had threatened him and, to put it mildly, threatened him with the sky in a cage. There is nothing sacred in today's youth. She had fun and made money. Kevin was indignant when he dialed her number. Hello, darling. Tracy answered affectionately, and from this voice, Kevin was shaken as if by an electric shock. He could not answer her in the same way, but Kevin did answer, gathering all his will in a fist. We should get together. He mumbled angrily. Did you bring the money? Tracy asked, and Kevin realized from her voice that she couldn't contain her laughter. Go outside. I'm standing under your window. Kevin said quickly and dropped the call. She's going to come out and shine like a polished samovar. Kevin had gone to this friend's house and borrowed money from him before he came to see her, and now he was using the last words he had to say about his ex-lover. She's a little slut. I knew in my heart that I'd get in trouble with her. I fell for a beautiful shell, and now I'll regret it for the rest of my life. I hope you're smart enough to keep your mouth shut. Kevin sighed and pulled a piece of paper and a pen out of the glove compartment. What's that for? Tracy asked in a disgruntled tone and looked at Kevin with wide-open eyes. It's a receipt where you tell me that you won't bother me with your crazy ideas. Right, Name? When the receipt was ready, Kevin gave Tracy the money. Thanks, Kevin. You're not thinking of flying with me tomorrow. She waved the bucks in his face. Otherwise, let's go have some grown-up fun together. She flirtatiously suggested it while she watched his reaction. No, Kevin said hesitantly, biting his lip, but then he pulled himself together and said firmly, Come on out. I don't have time for demagoguery. I've got a lot to do, and I'd like to never cross paths with you again. Never say never, Kevin. Tracy laughed and got out of the car. Maria got off work and decided to walk a little bit to the daycare center. And John's dad took him. What do you mean, Dad took him? Maria rounded her eyes in surprise. The teacher slammed her eyelashes and began to explain excitedly. When your husband came into the locker room, John threw himself on his neck and screamed, Daddy, I had no idea not to give him the baby. Why didn't you call me? How could you give him the baby? I can't believe it. Shouting at the teacher, Maria. Well, you should have warned us first of all, who can and who can't take the child. The teacher, whose eyes were running and hands were trembling from fear, began to justify herself. Remember, what did he say to John? Where did he take him? Maria grabbed the teacher's elbow and stared at her. He was talking about some amusement park. Maria took out her phone and started frantically searching her contacts for her husband's number. She prayed to herself and clenched her hands into fists. She dialed her husband's number several times, then texted him several more times, but Kevin didn't answer. "I'm going to the police to file a missing persons report." Maria texted him. A minute later, her phone rang and the incoming call was from Kevin. "Where's John? Why did you take him out of daycare? Who asked you to?" Maria shouted into the phone, not remembering herself from rage. "Maria, what are you doing?" Kevin laughed. "Don't forget that John is my son, and if anything, I have the same rights to him as you do. We're taking him for a walk, feeding the ducks, going on the Ferris wheel now. I didn't call you to distract you from important things. I wanted to spend time with my son. You said yourself that I don't spend enough time with him, so I decided to make up for it. Please bring him to Sophia right now. I'll be waiting for you on the bench near the entrance." Maria begged Kevin tearfully, "Stop making a big deal out of it." Kevin laughed. "Son, tell your mom not to worry. We haven't been on the swings yet, and we haven't ridden the steam train." The phone rang with John's happy voice. "Mom, we're gonna go out with Daddy for a little while." John's son. But Maria didn't have time to finish. "You, Maria, go home. I love him and I miss him. I'll bring him home later." Kevin hit reset. Maria wiped her tears, took a deep breath. "Try not to bring him back. I'll smash you against the wall." Maria sat on the bench outside the building and waited for Kevin to bring her son. She mentally raised her hands to the sky and prayed. Maria didn't even notice her sister, who came and sat next to her. "Sis, why are you sitting here? Where's John?" She turned her head and looked carefully at the playground, but not seeing her nephew, Sophia looked around and slowly looked at her sister. "Why are you so pale? What's wrong? Where's John?" Sophia asked her questions and looked at her sister carefully, not understanding what was happening to her. "Maria, please don't be silent. Say something." Sophia started to shake her by the shoulders. Kevin took John from the garden and now they are walking with him. They have a cultural program. Maria squeezed out of herself and began to wipe away the tears that rolled down her cheeks. "What an asshole!" Sophia scolded angrily. "Does he think he can get you back with these methods?" Maria covered her face with her hands and cried. "Sophia, say something. Calm me down. Do you think he'll give me my son back?" Sophia calmed her sister down for a long time. She gave various examples and arguments so that Maria didn't get herself worked up. "It's too early to be alarmed. John's with his own father. He's not gonna hurt him. Kevin loves him. He's his own blood." She mentally spat over her left shoulder and knocked on the wooden bench to prevent a disaster. "Maria, look, Kevin's car." Sophia grabbed her sister's elbow and they walked together to meet the car coming into the yard. Kevin parked the car slowly, unlocked the doors, rolled down the window on his side and smiled. Maria opened the back door and John happily fell right into her arms. "Mom, Dad, and I fed the ducks. I fed them a whole bun." John was talking excitedly, and we rode on the big wheel. I was scared, but I didn't cry. I'm a man, and men don't cry. Maria listened to the son's story with a smile, gently stroked his head, and occasionally moved her gaze to Kevin. "Well done." Swallowing a lump in her throat, she barely managed to squeeze out of herself. "Maria, why are you so pale? Have you been crying?" Kevin asked her in surprise and stared into her tear-stained face. He stepped out, leaned on the hood of the car, put his hands in his pockets and shook his head. "So that's what you think of me?" He grinned and shrugged. "And I've lived with this woman for 5 years. Could you really think?" But Maria didn't pay attention to Kevin anymore. All her attention was focused on her son, who was jumping around near his father and telling his mom where they were with his dad and how delicious cotton candy was. Kevin was watching Maria's reaction with the look of a victorious warrior, crossing his arms on his chest. Kevin thought to himself, not taking his eyes off his wife, and reluctantly shifted his gaze to Sophia, who was watching him with undisguised disgust. Their gazes met. "We must come up with a plan to eliminate this megastar." He grinned wryly at Sophia and winked playfully with one eye, but she rolled her eyes and turned away from him defiantly. "Thank you, Kevin, for making John's day. But please be sure to let me know if you're picking up the kid from daycare. Can you imagine how I feel when I go to pick up my kid and he's gone? Considering you've never done this before." Maria picked John up in her arms. Say goodbye to Daddy, son. We have to go home. You need to be fed, bathed. You don't have to feed him. We ordered pizza at the pizzeria, and he ate 2 slices. Kevin interrupted her, smiled, and waved goodbye to his son. Maria opened her mouth and looked at her husband incredulously. What happened to you, Kevin? Why such a change in attitude towards her son? I don't recognize you. She shook her head as if she were not Kevin, but some alien creature that fulfills their son's every whim. I hope you haven't changed your mind about the divorce, Sophia asked her sister as they went to bed late at night. Of course not. Maria grinned and thought about it. I feel sorry for John, though, because he loves his deadbeat dad. Maria sighed heavily. Come on, Sophia, let's go to sleep. I have to get up early tomorrow. My eyes are closing. I'm nervous today. Her head was spinning like a seesaw, thoughts that kept her awake. It will be necessary to explain to John why Daddy will live apart from them. Good that Sophia does not strain and allow to live with her. At least do not have to spend money on rented housing. After the divorce, probably I can buy a small apartment, but I will have to take a loan. The mortgage is unlikely to approve me. Buy an apartment in my neighborhood so that the garden does not change. John just got used to the children and teachers. With pleasure goes to the group. Maria took a deep breath. It's okay. I'm not the first one to divorce my husband. I will work, plus alimony Kevin will pay. We will not starve. Maria suddenly became afraid of his thoughts. She wiped away her tears with her hand. God help me, please. She whispered quietly with her lips and looked at her son sleeping sweetly next to her. Divorce, alimony, moving, court. What scary words. I never thought I would say them out loud and be alone to raise a child who was born in love and full harmony. Maria remembered how happy and proud Kevin was that he would have a son. He named him after his grandfather, whom he loved and respected very much. It was like a chainsaw went through my heart, cutting it into 2 halves, not giving a chance to cure it. Maria grinned again. I think my sudden departure is comparable for Kevin to the fact that at home at the same time out of order all appliances, iron, vacuum cleaner, electric stove. Maria again looked at her son, covered him with a blanket and gently stroked his head with her hand. Nothing, son, we will get through it. Everything will be fine with you and even better than it was. I will try to do everything for you so that you do not need anything. Kevin opened the mailbox. Right in his hands fell out a summons to the court. Crinkling his lips, he began to read the form. He walked home on wobbly legs and looked around the apartment disappointedly. The empty closet caught his eye and he looked at John's toys. He looked at the old shoes that were peacefully waiting for their turn in the trash with glassy, tear-stained eyes. In his head, he immediately turned on the calculator. How much money he had spent on this Tracy. You could not only buy new shoes for Marie, with this money you could completely update her closet. How Kevin wanted to turn back the clock and become a model family man. No more cheating on his wife. Cut all his mistresses out of his life and start over. What an asshole I am. Sighing, Kevin regretfully said to himself, looking at his reflection in the mirrored doors of the closet. He ran his hand through his short cropped hair, looked at the 3-day stubble on his face. No, Maria, I'm not ready to let you go yet. Don't even hope. This house needs a mistress. He looked at his reflection in the mirror again from all sides. If I were a woman, I would have married him without thinking. Kevin grinned, satisfied with his words. Kevin had always thought of Maria as a silly girl who could see nothing beyond her nose except pots and pans. Now she had grown up in his eyes into a stubborn woman who stood firmly on her feet and did not snot. Kevin was determined to bring his wife and son home, using all his tricks and manly wiles. Sitting in the car, he rehearsed the speech he would give his wife when he met her. He was distracted by a knock on the front window from his side. What has our mass entertainer come up with this time? With a smirk spoke Sophia, making a surprised face. Where are the flowers? He gave 2 bouquets and decided that was enough. She continued her speech, trying to bite him harder. Sophia, go where you're going. No one's been waiting for you for a long time. Men shy away from someone like you like an evil force. I'd think about it and draw conclusions, not turn Maria against me. Kevin grinned sorely and gave Sophia a cold, haughty look. At that moment, he saw Maria walking toward the car, holding John's hand. Kevin grabbed the summons and jumped out of the car. "Dad?" Kevin squatted down and held his son close to him. John closed his eyes and hugged his father's neck with childish naivety. "Where are you taking me today?" he asked his father and turned his head to get Maria's approval. "Son, I need to talk to my mom today. We'll go to the park some other time. Go home with Aunt Sophia. Mom and I have a very important matter to settle." "What's that?" Kevin stared at Maria angrily as the door slammed behind his son. "It's a subpoena. I told you I was filing for divorce," Kevin shrugged and calmly explained. "Maria, let's settle things like adults. Why rush? Give me a chance, and you yourself will realize that I realized all my mistakes and made the appropriate conclusions." "Do not cut off the shoulder." With a guilty look, he stretched out his hands, took her by the shoulders, and looked fondly into her eyes. Maria pulled his hands away. She grinned bitterly at his smooth-shaven face. "That's out of the question, Kevin." Upset by his wife's categorical answer, Kevin drove to work, angry at the world around him. "Damn you, Maria." Kevin swore in the car and tapped his hand on the steering wheel in frustration. "That's enough. I'm sick of being a good husband. No one would appreciate it anyway. I need to relax a little. After all, I have every right to do that." Kevin calmed himself, driving into the parking lot near the sports complex. At the reception, swaying her hips, a sultry brunette came up to him. Shooting her eyes at his broad chest, cubes on his stomach, and what is located a little below, Tomo asked, "Kevin, are you leaving already?" "You're wrong. I just got here." Looking at her with an appraising look from head to toe, Kevin answered, and with the look of a man who knows his own value, he walked casually into the locker room. "I can't believe how insensitive people are. Calling early in the morning." Kevin swore through his sleep, and with his eyes closed, he fumbled for the phone on the nightstand. "Kevin, why aren't you answering the phone? I've been trying to call you all morning." He heard his wife's voice and cringed with a headache. He opened his eyes and looked at the clock. 12:45. Then he looked at the brunette who was sleeping peacefully beside him. "Shit." Kevin cursed out loud and immediately grabbed his temples. "What happened last night?" "Kevin, you can help me out today and pick up John from kindergarten. It's just that my client is going on vacation and tearfully asked me to do hair coloring and cutting. And Sophia's going to a friend's anniversary party." "What anniversary, Maria?" Kevin could barely get a headache out of his mouth. "What are you listening to? I'm talking to you." Maria replied in an aggrieved tone. "Can you pick up John today?" Kevin got out of bed and ran his fingers through his hair. His temples ached so badly that hitting his head with a hammer would be a lot easier than enduring the abuse he'd taken this morning. Kevin tripped over an empty whiskey bottle, stepped on lacy underwear, kicked a dress that was in the way, and cursed. He made his way to the kitchen, poured a glass of water from the tap, and drank it greedily. "What are you saying, Maria?" he asked his wife, trying to understand what she wanted from him. "I'm asking you, can you pick up the kid from kindergarten tonight? Take him for a walk until I'm free." Losing her temper, Maria repeated for the third time. "Sure, honey, I'll do whatever you want." Kevin looked at the naked girl who had left the bedroom and put his index finger to his lips, signaling her to be silent. But the girl ignored his signs and asked loudly, "Is there cold water in the fridge? Are you thirsty?" "Kevin, are you busy? Did I call at a bad time?" After some thought, asked Maria, "Maria, are you out of your mind? There's a movie on TV. Don't you have anything better to do?" Kevin continued to grumble into the phone. Having finished the conversation, he sat down on the sofa and, looking at the naked girl walking around the apartment, tried to remember the events of last night. In his head, there were pictures of him making love with this brunette right in the elevator. How she flirted with him at the gym. And then they decided to go to the sauna together. The memory of what they did in the sauna made Kevin's cheeks flush, his ears fall off, and his hair almost fall off. Blee. I promised myself I'd never fall for those pumped-up asses and stupid painted heads again. I should have gotten drunk again. Kevin scolded himself with his last words and glanced at the girl who, without shame and conscience, was sprawled out on the couch in her mother's clothes. "Come on, get up and go home. I have to pick up my kid from daycare soon." Kevin shook her shoulder, but she didn't react. "You're deaf. Get up." The girl slowly looked at Kevin, smiled coquettishly, Kevin stared at her silicone breasts, looked at her tanned and firm body, but remembered his promise to his wife to pick up his son. He quickly pulled himself together and turned away. "What time is it?" Kevin, instead of answering, dialed the cab number and ordered a car. "The cab will be here in 10 minutes," Kevin shouted and carelessly threw her address. He grumbled unhappily. At 5 o'clock in the evening, Kevin took his son from kindergarten, and they went to the park to fulfill the planned cultural program. In the evening, satisfied John delightedly told Mary how much fun they had with his daddy and what the best daddy he has. The judge ruled they were given a month to reconcile. The delay may cool down the emotions of the spouses as the defendant intends to restore the relationship, and the plaintiff has no serious arguments for separation from her husband. Satisfied, Maria looked unhappily at her husband, who shone like a polished copper nickel. "You ask? Of course he is. You think only of yourself. A man has made a mistake, he repents. He's sorry for what he did. Why get a divorce? You need a ride?" Kevin opened the front door and gave her a gentle nudge into the car. Get in, get in, get in. Don't be silly." Kevin smiled when he saw that Maria was a little confused and didn't know what to do. "I'll just give you a friendly ride. We're not strangers to each other," Kevin said as friendly as possible and closed the door behind Maria. A minute later, they were driving through the streets of the city and talking about distracting topics. "Wait, where are you taking me?" Suddenly, Maria frowned and looked at Kevin. Kevin did not take his eyes off the road, shrugged his shoulders, and calmly said, "What do you mean where? Did you forget the way home? I thought I'd remind you. We need to talk quietly and without strangers. At work you have clients and colleagues. At home, Sophia, who always comes in with her jokes and unnecessary advice. I just want to talk to you in a quiet environment so that no one interferes with us." "All right." Maria sighed and stared out the side window. "Then I'll take some of John's things and toys," she said thoughtfully and smiled slightly. Maria entered the apartment. Her nose was immediately struck by the unfamiliar smell of expensive female perfume. The smell and the recent presence of another woman in the apartment she sensed immediately, but modestly kept silent. She went into the kitchen, looked around it. She went into the children's room and began to put in a bag his favorite cars, which he often remembered and regretted that he left them at home. "You see, Maria, you are not here and there is no comfort and warmth in the house. Sometimes I don't even want to come back here, knowing that you and your son are not home." Kevin looked into her eyes as if he was looking for sympathy and understanding. He took her hands and pressed them to his chest. "Let's go talk. You've calmed down a little bit, cooled off. Maybe we can find a mutual solution that will suit you and me." Maria carefully released her arms from his embrace and sighed heavily. "Kevin, I've made up my mind. I'm not going to change my mind. Don't get your hopes up." She picked up the broken baby car and carried it to the trash can. When she opened the lid, she saw empty whiskey bottles, 2 used contraceptives for safe sex, and a torn red thong. "You miss your wife and son pretty well." She snorted in disgust and threw the lid down. Kevin closed his eyes, mentally sent himself away, and slapped his hand to his forehead. "What an asshole. How could I forget to put the trash in the container this morning? It's not mine." Kevin was outraged and began to think up an excuse. "Don't bother making excuses. I don't believe a word you say." Maria waved her hand and hurried out of the kitchen. She sat down on the sofa, wrinkled her face, and said in a disgruntled tone, "I'm listening to you carefully." Everything Kevin had wanted to say had slipped out of his mind. He was looking for an excuse for his actions, but he didn't know what to say or how to get out of the situation. "Christopher came to visit me yesterday." Kevin picked up a tattered cardboard card that John had made with his own hands in the garden. How did it get here? He asked himself a question and couldn't find an answer. His mind was all jumbled up, his thoughts were jumping from side to side, but not a single worthwhile excuse was in his head. Kevin panted like a steam engine and angrily plopped down on the chair next to him. He slapped his hand on the armrest and looked at Maria with glassy eyes. "That's the kind of shit I am." Gesticulating vigorously with his hands, he began to justify himself. Maria gave him a cold stare and grinned again. "It's good that you realize that." They were both silent. studying each other with penetrating stares and thinking about their own things. I have to go to work. I have a client coming in for a haircut. Maria stood up abruptly and grabbed a bag of toys for her son. You won't even talk to me. You're so disgusted with me. Kevin squinted his eyes and continued to glare at Maria with his guilty look. The next minute, he jumped up from his chair and blocked Maria's way. I won't let you in. He shouted and shook his head a few more times for credibility. Kiss me, then I'll think about it. Are you crazy? I'm not going to kiss you. Don't even dream about it. Kevin got close to his wife. Maria, I'm so sorry. He heard his own hoarse voice and choked on his words. Please. He wheezed in her ear and pressed himself even tighter against her. Kevin, stop this whole concert. Maria gathered all her strength and pushed him away from her. Kevin took a step back, still staring into her eyes and watching her reaction. No, this isn't funny. Maria wailed and looked at her watch. I'm late. I really am. Kevin, I'll drive you. Kevin replied in a tone of defiance and began to put on his shoes. Thank you. Kevin drove her to work. He was in a bad mood. He kept thinking about the trash can and the surprised eyes. It's over, Kevin said out loud, cursing himself with his last words. I've been cleaning all morning and I'm still screwed. Kevin hit the steering wheel with all his might, not watching the road. When he looked up, his car was speeding down the highway. He was swerving into the oncoming lane where a huge truck was speeding by. On the slippery road, no one could slow down or swerve. Kevin closed his eyes and fell into darkness. Good evening. Maria, please come to the surgical ward of the regional hospital. Your husband was in a car accident. How he got into an accident? Maria's sisters fell out of her hands in surprise. She opened her mouth, but could not utter a single word. She stood there for some time without moving and staring stupidly at the phone screen. Okay, I'll be right there. Maria barely squeezed out of herself and wiped a tear that rolled out. Maria sank into a chair and stared at one point with a blank stare, trying to stop the trembling in her hands. Her whole life ran before her eyes in a few minutes, and all the plans were broken. Girl, stop. Who are you here to see? Visitors' hours are 3:00 p.m. You know, I got a call that my husband had been in an accident. They asked me to come to the surgical ward. The woman in a white coat looked at Maria, shifted her eyebrows, and shook her head unhappily. Put on a robe, shoes, and a basket, take, and go up to the second floor. Maria, my name is Paul. Kevin and I have been in the same gym for a long time. He has a compound fracture in his right leg, a concussion, 2 broken ribs, and a lot of soft tissue bruising. We've done everything we can, but we're not unlimited. We don't know how the bones will heal. We may have to do a second surgery and break the leg again. He asked me to call you and let you know where he is. Thank you very much, doctor. Her hands were shaking, her head was shaking, and one thought was on her tongue. Kevin would be fine. He's a lucky man. I believe in him. Maria, on woozy legs, walked out into the hallway. She sat on a bench against the wall and closed her eyes. I wish he'd come out of it and not be an invalid. Mary prayed to God and wiped the tears that involuntarily rolled from her eyes. A year passed. Kevin finally recovered, and despite his fierce resistance, Maria divorced him, leaving him no chance for reconciliation. While she was taking care of Kevin and bringing him to the hospital, Maria got to know Paul better. Between them, a spark flared up, which ignited into a big blazing fire. When Kevin learned that his ex-wife had a romantic relationship with his friend, he was shocked. To say that he was upset is not to say anything. For a week, he drank and came to his senses, and now he changes girls like gloves, justifying his behavior by the fact that his beloved wife left him and went to his friend, with whom he ate from the same plate as a child and drank from the same mug. True Kevin has become more discerning and does not throw himself at the first girl he meets without finding out her plans for the future. At first, he looks at her for a few days and then throws himself into the relationship, as in a maelstrom with his head. Sophia Paul met his friend. Kevin takes his son for a full day on Saturdays, and they have a great time together. They go for a walk, ride the merry-go-round, buy pizza and cotton candy. Kevin does not forget to remind John that his mom did a very bad thing.
Having colored the last cloud, 5-year-old Maria once again looked at her drawing and smiled dreamily, and then went to the kitchen, where her mother was preparing dinner. "Mommy, I drew you a picture," she said to her mother, holding out a piece of paper. The woman smiled and, having washed her hands, sat down on the stool. "Let's see," she said to her daughter, taking another masterpiece from her hands. "Well, tell me who you have depicted here." The girl came to the table and, showing with her finger one by one all the people and animals depicted by her, began to explain to her mother who is who. "This is you, Mommy, this is Daddy, this is my big brother, this is me, and this is my little sister, and this is our cat and dog." A happy smile played on the child's lips. Stacy stroked her daughter's head and smiled a little sadly. She had given birth to Maria at the age of 25 to a man she loved very much, except it turned out that he had no plans to become a father, and when he found out about Stacy's pregnancy, he urged her to have an abortion and gave her a choice. And Stacy made her choice. After packing up all her things, she moved in with her mom and never saw Maria's dad again. "Is it pretty, Mommy?" asked the girl, looking at her mother. "It's very pretty," Stacy replied. Maria had long dreamed of having a big family. She was sad to see fathers playing with their children on the playground. They put them on their shoulders, caught them from the slide, swung them on the swings, and together in the sandbox they molded dolls. The girl believed that one day she too would have a father, and also an older brother who would protect her and help her do her homework, and a little sister she would take care of, and when she grew up, she would be her best friend. There were no animals in their house because her grandmother was allergic to wool, and Maria, like any child, dreamed of a pet, but she didn't know who she wanted more, a cat or a dog, so in her drawing she depicted both, believing that one day she would have them. A year later, Stacy had been working at a neighborhood dentist office for 10 years. She loved her job, but for the past few months, she'd been going there like hard labor. Things hadn't worked out with the new manager, but she wasn't the only one, and she was already looking for a new place. And an unexpected call from a former colleague set things right. "So come to us," said the woman, listening to Stacy's complaints. "We need a doctor right now. And you have a lot of experience." "Veronica, I'd love to." "Are you sure they'll take you?" Stacy's spirits perked up. "I'm sure. I'll put in a good word for you." Veronica had been working in a private clinic for a couple of years and was happy with it. She called Stacy back the next day and told her that she could come in for an interview tomorrow. The owner of the clinic, Alexander, read all the documents carefully and looked at Stacy with a smile. "Well, welcome to the clinic," he said. "When are you ready to start?" Stacy smiled back. "I have to work 2 weeks at my old place, but I could start working here on my days off," she said. "Why the weekend? Work your ass off, and then come back when you're fired." Stacy walked home, a happy smile on her lips. The schedule was better and the pay was twice as much. The 2 weeks flew by quickly and she was eager to get started at her new job. "How you like it here?" Veronica asked after a week. "I like it very much." "Veronica, thank you so much." Stacy looked at her friend with gratitude. "That's great." Veronica smiled enigmatically. "Our Alexander obviously likes you," she said. "How do you know that?" Stacy asked. She hadn't noticed anything like that, though she liked her new boss. All she knew about him was that he was 37 years old and loved his job. He was an interesting man, and Stacy had no doubt that he was married, even though he didn't have a wedding ring on his finger. "I've seen the way he looks at you. I'm telling you, we'll marry you off," Veronica said. "Isn't he married?" Stacy asked. "I don't know the details of his love life, but he's been divorced for about 3 years. The only thing is that he has a son, Slaka. You'll see him sometime. Alexander brings him to the clinic sometimes. He seems like a normal kid, 10 years old. Maybe that's why he never remarried. Not everyone wants a husband with kids." Stacy understood that. She had a few affairs over the years, but no one was in a hurry to marry her, not wanting to take care of her daughter. Veronica was right, and Stacy and Alexander began an affair. "Maria, tomorrow we're not going out with you, but in very nice company," Stacy told her daughter one night. "Who with?" she asked, looking at her mother curiously. "Remember when you always wanted to have a daddy and a big brother?" Stacy smiled, because today Alexander had proposed to her, which she had gladly accepted, feeling happy for the first time in years. "Are we going to go out with them?" the girl asked excitedly. "With them?" Stacy replied. Mommy, will we have a little sister and a cat and a dog too? Well, they have a cat, Stacy said, because Alexander had just recently gotten a kitten. I can't say about the rest yet. Maria was looking forward to Saturday. She found her old drawing and began to look at it. Thank you, Santa Claus, she said. After all, she had written him a letter for New Year's Eve, not asking for toys, but asking him to fulfill her long-held dream of a big family. On Saturday, Maria quickly ate her breakfast. She couldn't wait to go to the playground, where her future father and brother would be waiting for her and her mother. The man sat down and handed Maria a box containing a large brown puppy that could walk and bark. Hello, Maria, he said, smiling good-naturedly at the girl. Your mom said that you dream of having a dog. Of course, it's not a real one, but we'll be sure to get a live puppy later too. Honestly, the girl asked excitedly. Of course, honestly, replied the man. We'll take a walk now, and then we'll go to our house and you'll play with Caramel. And she is small? Asked the girl. Very small. I'll show her to you now. The man took out his phone and showed Maria a picture of a kitten. And the girl glowed. She's so pretty, she said. Alexander got up and called his son, who was running around the playground with the boys. Colin, come here. The boy came over to them. He didn't look happy. Colin, this is Maria. I told you about her. Hi, he said nonchalantly, turning to look at the running boys. It was obvious that he wanted to run with them, and he wasn't interested in his newly baked sister. Hi, Maria answered, a little upset. Dad, can I go? He asked, looking at his father. Go, he said and looked at Stacy. Slavka is not a gift, but I hope you'll get along with him. Maria swung on the swing, looking with genuine adoration at Alexander, who was swinging her. After the walk, they went to a cafe, where her future father bought her a very tasty ice cream. And then all together went to visit Alexander and Colin, where Maria could not tear away from Caramel. She was not even upset by the fact that Colin did not want to communicate with her, closed in his room. Stacy and Alexander got married and Maria moved into a spacious new apartment where Caramel was waiting for her. She was completely happy with her new life, unlike Colin, who continued to ignore her, as did Stacy, who was trying hard to make the child feel at ease. Colin, come and have tea. I've baked your favorite muffins. Stacy walked into her husband's son's room. I don't want any, he said, keeping his eyes on the computer game. It had been months since the wedding, but the boy's attitude remained the same. He doesn't accept us, Stacy said to her husband one day, sighing heavily. He will. Just give him time, he replied, hugging his wife. The man himself was worried, repeatedly tried to talk to his son, but he only replied that they were complete strangers to him and he did not want to communicate with them at all. Colin had no conflicts with either Stacy or Maria, but just tried to pretend that they did not exist. But as time went on, he softened a little towards his new family. Why are you crying? One day he came into Maria's room when he heard her crying. I have a test tomorrow and I don't understand anything. I for homework put a D, sobbing, said the girl. Well, show me what you don't understand, he said, sitting down next to her. Here. Maria put the math book in front of him and showed him the examples she couldn't solve. How easy it is, he said, and began to explain how easy it is to solve. Algebra was very difficult for the girl, while her new brother grasped everything on the fly and was an excellent student, unlike her. Maria listened attentively, trying to understand. They solved a few examples together, and she began to understand more or less what she couldn't understand at all. Thank you, the girl said gratefully. It's okay, you're welcome, he replied. Colin, why don't you like my mom? She's nice, isn't she? Suddenly Maria asked. I like her, the boy answered, smiling a little. He left the room, and Maria looked at him and smiled. She realized that Colin had finally accepted her and her mother. Now all that was missing for her complete happiness was a little sister and a dog. 2 years later. She's so tiny, Maria said, standing by the crib and admiring her newborn baby sister, Casey. You were like that too, said Stacy, hugging her daughter with one arm. Nice. Colin smiled at Stacy. I agreed, she replied, ruffling his hair. And while she's sleeping, come on, I'll feed you. They quietly left the room, closing the door as Buddy, their 1.5-year-old beagle dog, rushed to his feet, wagging his tail and twirling happily. You little bully, said Maria, petting the dog. We should take him for a walk. Stacy looked at the children. Come on, let's wash up, eat lunch, and go for a walk. After a quick lunch, the children picked up Buddy and headed outside. And Maria thought about how dreams are bound to come true if they come from the heart. Years later, I can't wait to get over this. Maria sighed, looking at her friend Selena, with whom they were preparing for the final exams together. And don't tell me, she replied, puzzling over a physics problem. You and I will never solve this abracadabra. When is your brother coming? She looked at her friend. He should be here any minute. Only you ask him, or he will start to attack me again, that he studied for me all these years. Maria said. Colin finished school with a gold medal, and she had a few threes for the last year, and one of them was in physics. Since Colin had moved out, her grades had dropped dramatically. Maria went out into the hallway when she heard someone coming, and Colin was standing there with Casey, hanging around his neck. You're going to strangle her, he said, smiling at her, and she unclasped her arms and stood on the floor. Hi. Maria walked over and pecked her brother on the cheek. Selena came out of the room and waved at Colleen, rewarding her with a smile. Are you studying for your exams, you twosome? He asked Maria, smiling. With a pleading look in her eyes, the girl looked at her brother. No, and again no. Come on, girls, turn on your brains and yourself, he replied. Please, literally begged Maria, and Selena put her palms together and brought them to her face. She looked as if the world was about to end. Colin sighed and shook his head disapprovingly. What are we going to do with you? I'll just eat first. Why don't you heat up something nice for me? I'm on my way, joyfully replied Maria. Selena, let's go to the kitchen. Smiling at Colleen, her friend followed Maria. Well, I'm going for a walk with Buddy, said Cassie, and went to her room to change. Colin left, and satisfied girlfriends, having tea, settled down on the sofa in Maria's room. Maria, I like your brother, Selena confessed to her friend. Is he seeing anyone? His personal life is shrouded in fog, Maria said with a laugh. At least he hasn't brought anyone here. I think he likes me too. Selena smiled dreamily. Help me to have an affair with him. How can I help you? Maria asked. Well, we should go out together, maybe to a club. I think that could be arranged, she said. Thank you, Selena chuckled. What about you and Max? She asked. Maria met Max 4 months ago. He was in his 3rd year at the institute and was 3 years older than Maria. They met, and she liked the young man very much, except that he constantly hinted at intimacy, and the girl was not ready for it. I don't know. Everything seems fine, but he's always hinting at a cupcake. I understand him, but I'm not ready yet, I confessed to my friend Marie. Well, what's a relationship without that? If you're going to keep him, you'll find someone more agreeable. Maria understood that. You're right. We need to make up our minds, she answered, sighing. Do you love him at all? Selena asked. I think I do. Do you or do you? Here you go, sign your name, Selena said. Cullen, please don't say anything to your parents. You're sober, Maria's wasted. How so? He asked, supporting his sister by the waist, so that she did not fall. Oh, Slavka, hi, what are you doing here? Asked Maria, smiling stupidly. I'm going home, and you bring her to her senses, please. Selena got back in the cab. Come on, alcoholic. Cullen smiled and headed with Maria towards the entrance. You're all such assholes. Colin, Tony, are you a dog too? Eh? Maria stopped and looked into her brother's eyes. Of course I am. Go on. He led his sister to the entrance again and took out the key with his free hand. Here, you don't know how to love at all. You just want what you want, that's all. Yeah, Cullen agreed with her and opened the door. Maria staggered into the entryway and immediately sat down by the radiator, covering her head with her hands. Get up, you're sitting up, he said and stood opposite his sister. I cannot, Maria answered quietly. Colin lifted her off the floor, took her in his arms and called the elevator. You'll get a belt for sure, he said, stepping into the elevator. Whatever. Maria yawned widely. I'm dizzy. Really? Tomorrow you'll tell me why you got so drunk, you disgrace. At the apartment, Colin put his sister on her feet to open the door, then helped her take off her shoes and led her into the bathtub, where he turned on the cold water and then began to wash her face. It's cold. My makeup will smudge. Maria was indignant. Isn't it too early for you to put on so much plaster and get so drunk? Angrily, he asked and turned on the warm water to better wash the makeup off Maria's face. It's the circumstances. Maria replied with a slurred tongue. What are they? Colin asked. Max, the bastard. I saw him with some girl. He was making out with her and matching her ass. And I was stupid. I was going to give it to him tomorrow. Maria sighed heavily and cried. Who's Max? Are you going to have sex with him? Colin turned off the water, took Maria by the shoulders and gave her a good shake. Look at me. Angrily he said, and Maria immediately quieted down and timidly looked into her brother's eyes. Are you a fool? Isn't it too early for you to grow up? I thought he loved me. Maria answered with a sniffle. We'll talk later. Colin took a towel and began to wipe her face. Now you almost look human again. Maria got to her feet. Her head was spinning, her eyes were double. Suddenly she felt an attack of nausea and covered her mouth with the palm of her hand. Without a word, Colin took her to the bathroom. Next time before you get drunk, remember this, maybe it'll stop you, he said, holding her hair back. Maria felt a little better. After washing her face again, Colin took her into the kitchen and turned on the kettle. I'll call my parents. I won't tell them about your state of incapacity, but we'll talk to you again tomorrow, he said and dialed his father, naturally waking him up with the call. Colin said that Maria would spend the night at his place and that they would come together for lunch tomorrow. Then he poured chamomile tea for his sister, and after she had drunk it, sent her to bed. Colin, lie with me till I fall asleep, Maria said sadly, covering herself with a blanket. Shall I tell you another story? Colin turned off the light. Please, Maria asked. Are you feeling better? Colin asked and lay down next to his sister. Okay, not so much, she answered and laid her head on his chest. Why is everyone like this? She yawned and closed her eyes. Everyone is different. It's too early for you to sleep with men, he replied, looking up at the ceiling. That's not the point. He was with someone else, and we were supposed to meet tomorrow. It's disgusting. It's good then that I saw it today. I didn't make a big mistake. That Max doesn't love you, so you don't need him. Go back to sleep. Colin fixed the blanket. I'm gonna go in the other room. I'm sleepy too. Nah, wait till I fall asleep. Colin, why don't you have a girlfriend? Maria yawned and put her palm under her head. It's too early for me to think about relationships, so it's nothing serious, he answered. But not serious? Sure, enough of that. My personal life is my business. You're all the same. Maria sighed sadly. Men are a little differently organized than women. I think you know that. Maria, go to sleep. I'm already passing out. Colin yawned and closed his eyes. It was not a good morning. Maria opened her eyes and let out a slight groan. She was thirsty and had a headache. Colin, she moaned, but her brother didn't hear her. She got up from the bed and pulled Colin's t-shirt out of the closet. Putting it on, she went into the kitchen. I'm awake. Isn't your head boo-boo? He asked, putting the phone away. Bo. And I'm thirsty. Maria poured herself a full glass of water and drank it almost in one gulp. Here, I went to the pharmacy and bought you some magic pills. He handed her a packet of hangover pills. That's cool, thank you. She swallowed one right away. You want breakfast? Maria went back to her room and pulled her cell phone out of her purse. Selena had texted her while she slept, asking how she was feeling, and there was also a message from Max. Hey babe, what time should we meet tonight? He texted. No, we're not. Go see the girl from the club. Maria replied and blocked his number, then headed back to the kitchen. Colin, just please don't say anything to your parents, she asked her brother. I won't if you promise it's the first and last time, he answered. I promise. I've had enough. I hope you'll send Max away. I already did. Good for you. You should be thinking about your exams and how you're gonna get into your vet school. I'll study with you, of course, but just do your best, please, said Colin. Will you? Will you help me? Of course I'll help you, but I won't take the exams for you. Thank you. When do we start? We'll start next week. Are you sure you're going to go to veterinary school? Yeah. Teeth aren't my thing. You're running away from your family. Colin smiled. I'm sorry about that. Do you really want to pick your mouth? I'm going into prosthetics. It's a very good, high-paying job. Veterinarian's not bad either. No argument there. I'm kind of hungry. Maria felt her stomach rumbling. Scrambled eggs, scrambled eggs. What a choice. The girl smiled. Well, I'm not a cook. Colin took cheese, eggs, and sausage out of the refrigerator. Eggs and sausage and a cheese sandwich, Maria answered. The day was sunny, and after breakfast Maria suggested to her brother to take a walk in the park, which was not far from his house, and then to go home. As promised, Colin did not tell his parents anything about Maria, and from the next week, he began to study with her every night, and in the end Maria got on the budget, which was noted by the whole family in the restaurant. Max quickly got away from her, and the girl was glad that everything had turned out that way. After all, if she had not seen him by chance in the club, she would have made a big mistake. Now her fleeting romance with Max was a lesson for her, and Maria decided that only for great love, she would give a man all of herself. In fact, that was her next wish, to meet love. 3 years later, Oliver had been chasing Maria since her freshman year, but she didn't like the young man at all. And the fact that he wouldn't give up just annoyed her. And so once again Oliver invited her to a joint dinner, but was again refused. When she saw that Colin was already waiting for her near the institute, Maria breathed out a sigh of relief and waved to him. She couldn't wait to say goodbye to the annoying Valera. "Who's that?" Oliver asked, furrowing his eyebrows. "My fiancé," Maria lied. After all, Oliver doesn't know anything about her relatives, but at least he'll leave her alone, she decided, and hurried to Colin's car. "What's the picture?" Her brother asked her when she sat down next to him and kissed him on the cheek. "He's a cleany guy. I don't like him and he doesn't get it." "I'm sick of it," Maria said. "Okay, let's go get some flowers first. Today was Stacy's birthday, so we decided to just have a family get-together tonight." "What are you getting your mom?" Maria asked him. "A secret." Colin smiled enigmatically. "Oh, come on. I'll see it anyway. When I give it to you, you'll see it then." "Are you coming to the club with us on Saturday?" "I have to go. Carlos keeps pulling me back. He really likes your Selena. He wants to keep seeing her." "Is he okay with that? Selena liked you in general." "He's okay, you know him. I don't think your girlfriend still likes me." "She does. I know she does." "Maria, this subject is closed." Colin parked outside a flower store. After choosing a beautiful bouquet, they drove to the house, chatting about Maria's studies and Colin's work, without touching on topics of liking anymore. "Mom, happy birthday." Colin handed Stacy the bouquet and then pulled out a long velvet case containing a gold bracelet. "Well, you've made me golden today." Stacy smiled and then hugged Colleen and Maria in turn, kissing each on the cheek. Her husband had given her diamond earrings. Maria had given her a gold zodiac sign pendant from this morning, and here was a bracelet. "Come on into the kitchen. I didn't cook anything. We ordered everything from an Italian restaurant." Father and younger sister were already sitting at the table, waiting only for them. Maria loved it when they gathered like this as a family, discussing everything that could be discussed. Selena smiled strangely at Carlos, knowing that he sympathized with her, but she still liked Colin, who paid no attention to her. Even the slow dance he preferred to dance with his sister, not with her. "Selena doesn't like your friend." During one slow dance, Maria said, watching her friend. "If she doesn't, she doesn't. No one is forcing you to." Colin replied indifferently. "Are you still not ready for a serious relationship?" "Maria, you like to serve." Colin smiled without answering her question. "I have no one. I do not like anyone. I do not date anyone." "What's there to hide? You're the one with all the secrets. You could have told me. We used to tell each other everything, but now you're distant." "Distant? We see each other almost every day. What can I tell you? I just started working. I'm not in a serious relationship. Are you happy? Are there any non-serious ones?" Maria didn't give up. "I'll bite you. You're so clingy. I had some, but it's over now." Colin answered. "Is the girl that bored?" "That's it. Stop torturing me about my personal life." Fast music started again, and their conversation stopped. After a while, Selena thought a little to Carlos, and then even admitted to her friend that he was okay. Anyway, after the club they took a cab to her house together, because it was too far to walk to see her off. "My place?" Colin asked Maria. "Come on. It's closer to you," she agreed. Going up to the floor, Maria was the first to notice the girl standing outside her brother's apartment. "What are you doing here?" he asked, and Maria realized that Colin was not at all happy to see this nocturnal guest. "Who is it?" The girl glared angrily at Maria. "None of your business. Get away from the door." Colin pulled out his keys, but the girl blocked his way. "Who's that little girl, I ask you?" she shouted. "Get out of my way and get out of my way," said Colin, coming almost right up to her. "So this is what you traded me for." She grinned, casting a scornful glance at Maria. "We didn't have the kind of relationship that would make you throw tantrums at me now. I see what's wrong with you." She shifted her gaze to Maria. "And to you, girl, I want to tell you that you shouldn't get involved with this dog. They'll find a replacement in no time." She threw a hate-filled glance at Colleen, then went to the elevator. "Shall we go to sleep or watch a movie?" Colin asked when they were in his apartment. "We could watch a movie, so you dumped her." "Stop seeing her. I didn't expect her to come over. We weren't serious." "She didn't seem to think so." Maria answered it and went to the kitchen. She had voiced that she didn't want a relationship when we started dating. She was interested in meeting and having a good time. "Maria, I'm not a monk, and I was fine with that, and then it started. Well, when one is no longer satisfied with the format of a relationship, one should break up." "I don't get it. I'm against it." Maria looked at her brother with judgment. "You're right to be against it. Let's go to the room to choose a movie." Having settled down on the bed, they began to watch the latest movie. "Maybe a mystical thriller?" Colin asked. No. Not soaps. And not a horror movie. Comedy? I could do that." Choosing a comedy they both hadn't seen, Maria and Colin got comfortable and stared at the big TV hanging on the wall in front of them. When Maria opened her eyes, she realized she was actually lying on top of Colin. Her head was resting against his chin, and one of his hands was resting on her back. She froze for a moment, then slowly raised her head to see if he was asleep. He was asleep. Apparently, they both passed out without finishing the movie. She decided and gently removed his hand before sliding off him and rolling to the other side of the bed, immediately wrapping herself in the blanket. Strange feelings came over the girl, and she blushed with embarrassment. Maybe she shouldn't stay overnight at Colleen's anymore, she thought, and closed her eyes, slowly drifting into sleep. When she woke up a second time, she found that no one was in bed but her, and then she heard the front door open. She got up, adjusted her t-shirt, pulled up her jeans and left the room. "Hi, Sophia," said Colin with a smile and handed her a bag. "Bought us yogurt and pastries for breakfast." "Hi." Maria took the package and went to the kitchen, thinking all the time about the first time she woke up and the feelings that came over her at that moment. Of course she loved Colin, there was no question about that, but how did she love him? For the first time that question began to roll around in her head. She was ashamed of such thoughts, but she couldn't get rid of them. "Why are you like this?" Colin asked, obviously noticing that his sister was puzzled about something, because she looked very pensive. "Nothing." Maria smiled immediately and put the pies in the microwave. "What are your plans for today?" he asked her. "Nothing. I'll have breakfast and go home." "And you?" answered Maria. "I want to rest today. I have a lot of work tomorrow. I want to watch a movie, because we didn't watch it yesterday." After these words, Maria blushed and immediately turned away. "You can keep me company. We'll order sushi for lunch, watch movies, and in the evening I'll take you home." Okay. She didn't realize how she'd gotten that out of Maria and immediately regretted it. But she didn't want to leave Colleen. "Get the pies out." Colin put 2 glasses of tea on the table. "You don't seem like yourself today." "Maria, are you all right?" He looked her in the eye. "Yes, I'm fine," she answered and took the cakes out of the microwave. After breakfast, Colin and Maria settled back on the bed to finish watching the movie they had fallen asleep to. Colin threw his arm over her shoulder, and the girl rested her head on his shoulder, catching herself thinking that it felt good to have his arm around her. And in fact, she always felt good around him. At some point, she felt Colin lightly stroking her shoulder. Maria lifted her head and looked at him. Their gazes met for a moment, and then Colin was staring at the TV again and abruptly removed his hand from her shoulder. "It's all stiff," he said, and Maria moved a little farther away from him, not really interested in the movie. "Colin, I should probably go home," said Maria when the movie was over. "Let's at least wait for sushi. We'll still have time to watch the whole movie while they dream him," he said. "Why are you in such a hurry all of a sudden?" What's going on with you today? I can tell something's going on. Nothing. I just need to wash up and get ready for the institute, Maria answered. Well, it won't take long to wash, and you can do it at my place. And packing for the institute doesn't take a lot of time. Well, then let's watch another movie, and after sushi I'll go, Maria agreed, unable to find the words to explain her haste. Colin began to suggest movies to watch, and this time they decided to watch sci-fi. Maria moved away from her brother, deciding that from now on she would avoid tactile contact with him. Maria took a cab home. Colin, of course, insisted on driving her home, but she convinced her brother to stay and rest before the hard work of the day. All week Maria found different excuses not to meet Colin, but on Saturday he came to visit them. After having lunch with everyone, Maria went to her room and sat down at the computer. I don't want anything. Maria went to the window and, pulling back the curtain, looked out into the distance. Colin quietly came up behind her and put his arm around her waist. Have you lost your mind with everything? Maria bounced away from him like a scolded woman. Good, we'll get back to this conversation later. Colin sighed and walked out of her room. Isn't Maria going to have tea? Stacy asked when everyone came into the kitchen except Maria. I'll get her, said Cassie, and went to her sister's room. Finding Maria sitting on the bed and covering her face with her palms, Casey was very surprised, not understanding what suddenly happened to her sister. Maria, what are you doing? She asked and sat down next to her. Nothing. She sighed and took her hands away from her face. Did something happen? Did you have a fight with Colleen? No, just some problems. It's no big deal. Maria forced a smile. Let's have tea then. Everyone's in the kitchen. Come on. Maria got out of bed. She didn't want her parents to think that something had happened to her. At the table, Maria tried not to look at Colin, feeling that he occasionally glanced at her. She finished the tea party quickly and, saying that she had a lot of reading to do on her studies, went to her room. When she saw Colin's car outside the institute, Maria stopped, feeling her heart beat faster. Is the fiancé meeting her again? Oliver asked, appearing out of thin air. Of course, Maria answered and, gathering her courage, went to the car. Colin immediately got out of the car. Aye, he said with a smile. Why did you come here? Maria asked, giving him a stern look. We didn't agree yesterday, he answered and opened the car door. Get in. Let's go and sit somewhere. Maria silently got into the car and fastened her seatbelt. The most frightening thing was that she wanted to repeat yesterday's kiss and more. Colin stopped the car at the nearest cafe. Have you come to your senses? He asked after they had ordered. More than recovered, Maria replied. Maria, I want you and me to be together, said Colin. And how are you going to tell your parents that? Imagine how they would react to such news. No, nothing can happen between us, and I'm so sorry we ruined the beautiful relationship we had. Maria replied, staring at the menu. Our relationship will be even more beautiful, and our parents will be shocked for a while, but everything will be fine. It's like you keep forgetting that we are not brother and sister or blood relatives. There's no impediment to our relationship. Colin, I don't know what to say at all. Maria looked at him with a suffering look. It was very difficult to fight herself, especially since he really wasn't her brother in essence. Let's tell our parents today that you and I are getting married, he suggested. The girl's eyes widened, and she paled and opened her mouth to stare at him. Well, not directly in the forehead, but we'll talk carefully, explain that we love each other. Do you mean it now? Maria regained the power of speech. Absolutely. Colin put his hand on top of hers. Maria, I love you. And for how long? She asked shyly, starting to blush. I realized about 3 years ago, but I can't say how long. Does it matter? A waiter came to their table and brought their order. Shall we go to my place after the cafe? Colin asked when the waiter left. Did you just invite me for a cupcake? Maria asked, blushing even more. No, I just want to be alone with you. I promise I won't pester you. Unless you want to, nothing will happen, he answered. Amazed at herself, Maria drove to Colleen's house, having previously informed her parents that she would not come to spend the night tonight. She should have refused, but instead she agreed, unable to cope with her desires. Colin kept his word. He didn't even try to kiss Maria when they were in his apartment, and Maria really wanted him to kiss her, and despite the fact that she was afraid of intimacy with a man, because she had never had anyone. She also wanted it, or rather to say she wanted it with him, and to get married too. Even thought about the fact that they would have 2 children. "What are you doing?" Colin asked her, seeing how Maria shook her head. "Nothing. It's just a blur in my eyes," she lied as she went into the bedroom. "Are we going to watch movies again?" she asked. "Whatever you want. We can watch a movie. We can just talk," he said. "Let's watch Guardians of the Galaxy. Selena went to the movies last night. She liked the movie. She says it's on the net too. If it is, let's do it." A few minutes later, Maria and Colin were already sitting on the bed at a pioneer's distance from each other. He raised his arm at shoulder level, inviting Maria to sit next to him. Realizing this without words, she scooted closer and even covered her eyes for a moment when his hand came down on her shoulder. Because of the pile of thoughts in her head, Maria wasn't up for a movie, so she couldn't stand it. "Colin, kiss me please," suddenly she whispered after about half an hour of watching the movie. The man smiled and gently touched her lips with his lips, and then something happened that Maria didn't expect from herself. Colin didn't insist on more than a kiss, but Maria inclined him to it, not saying a word, but rather quickly freeing him from his clothes and caressing his body with her hands. "Time to wake up." Maria heard Colin's quiet voice and opened her eyes slightly. 5 more minutes," she whispered back, and a smile appeared on her lips. "Sophia," he answered, covering her neck with kisses. "Well, at least 3 minutes," Maria said, not wanting to get out of his embrace. "Good," Colin said, pulling her closer to him. In the end, they lay for 10 minutes, and then they had to get up. "How are you?" Colin asked Maria. He was very careful, of course, for fear of hurting her, and it seemed to him that what had happened between them last night had pleased Maria as much as he had, but he was still worried about the girl. "Very well. And you?" "I'm very inexperienced." "Did you have a good time with me?" she asked, blushing. Colin immediately put his arms around her and kissed her lightly on the lips. "It was great," he answered. "We'll tell our parents tonight." "No," Maria objected. "Let's not tonight." She was still afraid to imagine their reaction to such news. "When?" "Maria, I don't want to hide and meet you secretly. Don't worry, I'll take the fall if there is one. But I know they'll eventually digest it, understand, and won't hold it against us. Let's do it next weekend." "Why wait so long?" "I need to get in the mood." "Saturday then, and no excuses later." "Okay," Maria agreed. "Go wash up, and I'll make breakfast." Colin kissed Maria once again and went to the kitchen. When Colin stopped the car near Maria's institute, he wished her a good day, kissed her goodbye, and said that today he had a lot of work and they could not meet, but he would call her when he was free. All day Maria smiled, not really getting into her studies. Her thoughts were far away from her right now, and there was nothing she could do about it. "You've been in the clouds all day today," said her classmate Julian, with whom they were on friendly terms. "Are you in love?" "You could say that," said Maria. "And who's the lucky guy?" "Someone from the courts or the institute." "No, he's not from the institute." Maria was not going to go into details. "Secret?" "No, he worked at Dad's clinic," Maria said, and it was basically true, because Colin worked with his father, worked. "A dentist?" "Yeah," Maria said. "Are you going home?" "I'm waiting for Sabrina. I'm going to the mall with her. She's going to her sister's wedding to pick out a dress. Do you want to come?" Julian suggested it. "I'm going home," Maria answered. "See you tomorrow then." "See you tomorrow." As Maria left, Oliver approached Julian. "Why are you looking so sour today?" she asked him. "Nothing." "Do you happen to know if Maria is serious about this on the audit?" he asked. "What audit?" Julian didn't understand. "Well, on the gray audit that often picks her up." Julian laughed. "So it's her brother who picks her up, but she has a boyfriend too. So, Oliver, forget it and switch to another subject." Julian replied. "Brother?" asked the man, eyes bulging. "Yeah, why are you so surprised?" "No reason," Oliver answered and walked away. He'd seen Maria kissing this brother in the morning. In the evening, Colin did not call, but came to their house with his parents. Maria was terribly afraid that he would now tell them everything about their relationship, but Colin did not. They all had dinner together, and then, when everyone had gone to their rooms and after talking to Casey, he went to Maria and barely having locked the door of her room behind him from the inside, he immediately put his arms around her and kissed her. "I miss you terribly," he whispered. "Are you crazy? They can hear us," she said in a low voice. "Well, we're not going to do anything that they might hear," he said. "I just wanted to see you." "Did you miss me a little?" "I missed you a lot," Maria answered and pressed herself against him. "I should have told you today. We decided on Saturday." "I remember," he said. "Tomorrow I'll take you to the institute." "Okay," Maria agreed. Colin did not linger long in Maria's room. They chatted a little, and then he went to sleep in the room where he had once lived. Oliver arrived early and waited for Maria. When he saw the gray Audi, he hid behind one of the columns near the entrance to the institute and watched. From this place it was very well visible how Maria was kissing this very brother. "Please," he burst out from what he saw. Such perversion he had never seen before. Oliver pulled out his phone and took a few pictures. He didn't wait for Maria to get out of the car and went to the institute. Throughout all the classes, Maria saw Oliver staring at her with a very strange gaze. When they ran into each other in the cafeteria, she couldn't stand it and asked, "May I ask why you stare at me all the time?" Maria asked him. "I'll tell you after class," he replied. "I'm not really interested in the reason. Just stop looking at me like that," Maria said and went to Julianne, who was already paying for her lunch. Oliver waited for Maria on the street, glad that the gray Audi was not near the institute. "Shall we walk to the subway?" he asked when the girl came out into the street. "No, Oliver, I've told you a million times I'm not going out with you. Stop following me," Maria said irritably. "I didn't know you were a pervert, Maria." He grinned nastily and then took out his phone from his jacket pocket and showed Maria the photos of her kissing Colleen in the car. "I'm very curious. Do your parents know what their kids are doing?" "At the institute too." "No one knows yet, but that's just for now," he said in such a tone, as if between them a battle in which she lost. Maria was frightened at first, and then suddenly began to laugh. Could she have thought that this underdog was spying on her? This is spy stuff. "Oliver, are you playing spy?" Maria asked through her laughter. "No. I just happened to find out you were with your own brother. Pervert," he replied, making a squeamish grimace. "Without knowing anything, you shouldn't draw conclusions. He's not my brother." Maria stopped laughing and looked at her interlocutor like an idiot. "Your brother comes for you on the gray auditory." He didn't understand. Julian obviously told the truth. There was no doubt about it. "No, we have different parents, so I'm not a pervert, but you're a total asshole." Not wanting to continue this conversation, Maria hurried away. When Colin called her in the evening, she told him about the situation and they laughed together. "I hope this Oliver won't go running around the whole institute and spreading gossip," he said. "What's there to gossip about? I told him that you and I are not related," answered Maria. "He can present it differently, but there is no point in it." "Maria, come to me tomorrow after the institute. I'll give my father the spare keys, and you take it from him. I think he'll understand right away if you give me the keys. Let's better on Friday I'll come to you, and on Saturday we'll go home together and talk to your parents," Maria suggested. "It's a long way to Friday." "Maria, I want to see you more than once a week. I want you to move in with me," Colin confessed. "I miss you too, Colin, but I don't want it to be a mess. We should get together and have a proper talk. We'll do that on Saturday, and then we'll go to your place on Friday." "Okay," he sighed heavily. "Kisses and good night's sleep." "You too," Maria replied with a smile. Julian rushed to Maria as soon as she arrived at the institute. "Maria, this Oliver told me today that you are sleeping with your brother and lying that he is not your brother," she said quietly, so that no one would hear them. "What a degenerate." Maria clenched her fists. "Julian, Colin really isn't my brother," she admitted. "I don't understand anything. You said yourself that he's your older brother." Julian stared pointedly at Maria. "She did. His dad married my mom when I was 5 and Colin was 10. We grew up together since then. Then my mom gave birth to Casey. We both call our parents mom-dad, but Colin and I aren't related," Maria explained. "Oh wow, so you were living together and suddenly you had an affair?" "No, it just started, and Colleen hasn't lived with us for a long time. Julian, we were always good together. We just didn't realize we had different feelings for each other right away." "How did your parents feel about it?" Julian asked, fluttering her eyes open. We haven't told them yet. We're going out on Saturday. There's nothing wrong with us loving each other and wanting to be together. I'm nervous about it, but I think it'll be fine. Without shock, of course, will not do, but Mom and Dad we have normal will understand, I think. I don't want any rumors to spread around the institute. I won't tell anyone. And unless your brother and sister, there's nothing wrong with your affair. There's nothing to gossip about. Julian replied. Exactly. Maria agreed with her, and they went to the first couple. Colin was waiting for Maria at the door of the institute, holding a beautiful bouquet of flowers. Julian smiled broadly when she saw him and then looked at Maria, whose face lit up with a happy smile when she saw Colin, and without any shyness threw herself at his neck and kissed him on the lips. When Julian saw Oliver, who was not happy, she came to him. Stop staring at them, she said, and shut your mouth before your jaw falls off. You said he was her brother. Oliver glared angrily at his classmate. I was wrong. It's just that their parents are married. There's no blood relation between Maria and Colleen, so they're not perverts. Oliver mumbled, glanced at the kissing couple, and then strode away. Maria and Colin hugged and walked to his car. How are you doing at the institute? That Oliver didn't spread any obscene rumors? Colin asked, starting the car. I told Julian, but I told her everything as it was. It's just that before I told her you were my brother without going into details. Your parents didn't ask where you were sleeping tonight? They did. I told them I was going to the club with Selena, Carlos, and you, and since you live much closer to the club, I'd be staying at your place tonight. They react calmly to it and don't even seem to suspect anything. Maria smiled. Selena's having an affair with Carlos. Oh yeah, and you kept saying she liked me, said Colin. I know. It's a good thing she switched. Jealous of me? Colin smiled slyly. Nope, I knew you were indifferent to her, Maria replied. As soon as they were in Colin's apartment, he immediately embraced Maria and began to kiss her, taking her into the room. I missed you terribly, so I won't let you sleep tonight, he whispered, deftly releasing her from her clothes. I don't mind that at all, Maria replied, unbuttoning his jeans. She even felt a little ashamed of her lecherous behavior, but her desires overcame her shame. She felt so good now, and she didn't want to leave Colin even for a minute. She didn't care about gossip. If it got around the institute, she wasn't afraid to confess everything to her parents. She wanted to be with him. She wanted from him not brotherly love, and what was happening between them now was beautiful and filled her soul with boundless happiness. After stopping first at a cafe for breakfast, Maria and Colin went to her parents to finally tell them about their relationship. Are you afraid? Colin asked Maria before they entered the apartment. Not as much as before, she said as she turned the key in the lock. Stacy was the first to greet them. How was the dance? She asked, smiling at the kids. It was fine, Colin answered, helping Maria take off her jacket. You wash your hands. Come into the kitchen. I made pancakes. We just had breakfast at the cafe, so we'll have pancakes later. Colin answered, Where's Dad? In his office, sorting out some paperwork, Stacy said. In case he's out with her friends, she'll be back for dinner. Mom, can you get Dad, please? We need to talk, said Colin. There's something wrong? She asked, and the smile disappeared from her face. Nothing bad, he said. Everyone gathered in the kitchen and Colin was the first to speak. Mom, Dad, don't be nervous and don't react very violently, he said, noticing how Maria had turned pale. The thing is that Maria and I, well, in short, we are not really brother and sister, and we have a slightly different relationship. We're serious and we want to be together. Stacy turned white as a sheet, and Alexander frowned and stared at his son in amazement. I know you're in shock, but there's nothing wrong with me and Maria loving each other. Colin continued. Yes, but, Stacy mumbled, not knowing what to say. What's the but, she thought, not finishing her sentence. Well, you, Alexander said and wrapped his arms around his head. Mom, Dad, but Colin and I are not related to each other. We can be together, and there's nothing wrong with it. Maria rambled on. Now I see what you were doing when you stayed at his place, Stacy said with a hint of reproach in her voice and looked at her daughter with a judgmental look. Not at all, Colin said in his own defense. I wonder how you realize that. Alexander slightly raised his tone. The man was clearly angry. They started tumbling around in bed and it hit you. Daddy, Maria gasped and blushed. I'm just shocked. Alexander shook his head. Dad, we want to get married. We want to live together. What's that got to do with tumbling around in bed? Cullen said. Are you going to start a family? Alexander sighed heavily. Is that a bad thing? You're looking at me as if Maria and I were incestuous. I understand that all this is unexpected for you and Mom, but we don't want to hide our relationship and feelings from you. Cullen replied. We'd all need to calm down, said Stacy, and took a breath and then an exhale, trying to come to her senses after such news. That's for sure. Alexander agreed with his wife. It's going to be an interesting family. Although, you're really not brother and sister, so. Alexander waved his hand and got up from the table. Where are you going? Stacy asked him. To get a whiskey. Do you want one? No. But I need a drink. Grab me some wine, Stacy said. Mom, it's not a big deal. Maria put her hand over her mother's. It's just unexpected. We didn't realize things were like this between you two. We couldn't even imagine it, Stacy sighed. Are you against us getting married? Maria asked, looking sadly at her mother. I need to get over this. Of course you're not brother and sister, and you can have a relationship. It's just that we've all lived as a family, and to me you're both my children. Stacy suddenly started to cry, and Colin immediately got up from his seat and hugged her. Mom, what are you doing? He asked and smiled slightly. Alexander returned to the kitchen with 2 bottles and poured whiskey for himself and wine for his wife. Irish, drink a little and calm down, he said, and the woman realized her head and looked at Colleen. How are we going to tell all this to Casey? She asked. She knows that Maria and I are not related to each other. We'll explain everything. Don't worry, please. Oh, Stacy took a glass of wine and drank it in one gulp. Looking at his wife, Alexander drank half a glass of whiskey, took a bite of lemon, wrinkled his nose and looked at the children. When are we going to get married? He asked. We haven't applied yet, but of course we want to get married in the summer, Colin answered. Will you live with you? Sure, I'd like Maria to move in with me now. Well, the man poured himself another whiskey and drank it all down again. I hope it's serious and there will be no divorce in the future, he said. It can't be more serious. I've loved Maria for a long time and I'm sure I always will, Colin replied. I'm sure that's a good thing. Stacy, what do you think? He looked at his wife. What can I say? If they love each other, let them get married. The woman looked at the children and smiled slightly, and Colin hugged Maria without any shyness. Soon Casey returned from a walk, and everyone explained to her that Maria and Colin would soon become husband and wife. The girl, of course, was also shocked by such news, but she took it less emotionally than her parents. Everything was not so scary, said Colin with a smile, when he and Maria returned to his house, taking most of Maria's things. I was terribly nervous, though, she admitted. I've noticed, but it's still good. He hugged the girl and looked into her eyes. Maria, I love you so much, and I'm very happy that we don't have to hide anything, as if we were criminals with you, he said. It made me feel so much better that we confessed everything. Mom and Dad had scared me with their reaction at first, but I believed that they would understand and wouldn't be against us. And I didn't doubt it, he said. I'm still surprised that I didn't realize how much I loved you before, and not like my brother, Maria said with a smile. I didn't realize that I loved you differently either. The most important thing is that we finally realized it, and now we are together. Shall we go through your things? Let's go. They hugged and went to their room. Maria and Colin married in the summer, and 3 years later they had a son. By then Maria had just finished her studies and had already done some work in a veterinary clinic. All her dreams came true, albeit with some nuances, because she no longer has an older brother. But she does not regret it at all.
Thank you for watching this video to the end. Subscribe to the channel. Like it, write comments if you like the story, and see you on the channel.